Okay, so we're moving forward by moving backward to the 8 o'clock Medfield Planning Board and Selectmen joint meeting to hold a special election to vote to elect a candidate to fill vacancy created by the resignation of 20-year member Wright Dickinson. Selectmen are requested to vote to appoint James Brand and Seth Meehan, associate members, as recommended by the Planning Board.
Actually, you're both gonna, both committees are gonna vote.
Right, by roll call. And we have to move to accept nominations, Pete.
Yep, so we open the floor to nominations. Do we have nominations?
It's planning board on May 1st. We voted to have nominate Greg Sullivan, who's been associate for over a year now, to fill the vacant seat of Wright Dickinson.
Excellent. Is there a second to that, or? Second. So can we, are there any other, I'm sorry. Can I ask for any other nominations?
Yeah, for the full-time seat.
Hearing none, then could the clerk call the roll?
Probably wanna start with the planning board too.
Say it again.
Yes.
Yeah.
I'm gonna call the roll. Teresa's not here. Teresa James. Paul McKechnie,
Yes,
who do you vote for?
Greg Sullivan.
All right, George Lester,
Greg Sullivan.
Sarah Lemke,
Greg Sullivan.
Gus Murby,
Greg Sullivan.
Osler Peterson,
Greg Sullivan.
and I also vote for Greg Sullivan. Did I miss anybody? I don't think I missed anybody.
Thank you for
Congratulations,
agreeing
Greg.
to serve.
And they are unanimous in that.
Right.
Now, they also carry a formal legal associate member who fills in when there's a conflict, when you need a super majority. So I understand you've got somebody for that position too?
But they make their own appointments on that. I don't believe that's,
No, I thought we needed
I think we have to.
we do.
Well, it says here that Selectmen are requested to vote to appoint James Brand and Seth Meehan, associate members, so.
Yeah, historically, you guys have always appointed, you appoint the associate members.
on our,
Okay,
The full member, like Greg, had to be voted for.
that's correct, because he's an elected, he's an elected.
Yeah.
You just, I don't know when,
Next year.
his
Until the
term
next
is
election.
actually up, so you don't have to, you'll just run for the full term at that point, if you want to.
My understanding
You got a year to think about it, Greg.
So do we have a motion to appoint James Brand and Seth Meehan, associate members?
I
of
will
planning?
move that we appoint James Brand and Seth Meehan as associate members of the planning board as recommended by the planning board.
Second.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Yep, thank you. Citizen comment period. Did anybody sign up for citizen comment? Seeing none, we'll move on to whatever else we're doing.
Suzanne did
Gotta go back to the
arrive.
address. Main Street address.
Oh,
congratulations.
Suzanne, we skipped over you and, because you weren't here, and we'll come back to you. So did you get the letter from the building commissioner? You probably want to see the letter from the building commissioner, because he says that you shouldn't be able to change.
Should we be able to change?
You want to take a moment to take a look at that, and we'll do some other stuff?
So, can I ask a quick question, because I was,
Need a microphone.
advised by my real estate attorney, that it is the job of the selectmen to make decisions on addresses, not the building commissioner.
Yes, we make the decision. He's
Oh,
re- he's-
based on
he's making a-
his.
He's making a
Oh,
recommendation.
okay, I thought
so
his was, okay, his was the
As
final.
is the fire chief.
Okay.
Both of them are recommending that we don't change it. So then so we'll come back to you in a second. We have a letter to resigning, Ann Thompson resigning from the recycling committee. So we don't need to vote to accept that, we just accept that, right? And send her a letter of thank you. Medfield State Hospital Insurance, Chris is gonna talk to that.
Yes, we have two proposals for insurance at the state hospital. Originally, when we first purchased the hospital, we determined we were not going to take out insurance for the property. We were not allowing anybody in the buildings. We spent close to $300,000 sealing the buildings. However, given our current arrangement, we are allowing a company to go into those buildings. We have revisited that and decided to do insurance on the property. I received 2 quotes. One was in the amount of $36,650, and one was in the amount of $18,528. And so I would recommend that you vote to award the $18,528 to Corkland and Haviland Insurance Company.
Same coverage?
Same coverage. Actually, the $18,000 includes an umbrella policy, so it's actually a better policy
Oh,
than what.
excellent.
our
And
other
who's the insurer on that?
It is, let's see, Nautilus Insurance Company.
They've got a rating there.
Yes, it was the rating that you had reviewed.
It's rated fairly high.
They were actually rated higher than the one in the other policy, so.
Do we know how much the town's general insurance policy costs us per year?
Is
They,
there,
well, they won't insure,
Yeah.
our town insurance will not insure the property.
Yeah, I'm just wondering what we pay for insurance, the other policy.
Public
they,
liability.
yeah, they won't insure vacant buildings.
I know, I'm just wondering what the cost is of the premium.
What it would cost?
What do we pay for our current insurance that we have right now?
I don't know
Well,
off the top of my head.
I could give you a breakdown, you know, I'd say the budget, I think we budget around 170,000, but that covers boiler, auto liability, so I'd have to get a
Workers' comp,
breakdown.
maybe?
Casualty, property
Workers' comp is a separate budget, yeah, but it's fire theft, liability, boiler, professional liability, police liability, school officials liability. So I'd have to give you a breakdown. My guess would be somewhere
I
around
get it.
50 or 60,000
Yeah,
for the
thank you.
liability portion.
Any further,
Just an
Questions?
administrative question, the money for this 18,000, I'm just curious, we've got rent coming in that goes to the general fund.
I was gonna take this out of the operating budget, the grounds and maintenance operating
Okay, so
budget.
you have the money in there to do that.
Correct.
We actually
Yep.
set up a revolving fund for this anyway.
Okay,
Right, but I have this budgeted through the,
okay.
All right, so I would move that we enter into the insurance policy as described by Mr. Weiler.
Second.
any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Then
And
just-
the
can
term
you
of
just,
that insurance, I should have asked, it doesn't matter on the vote, but term of that insurance, how long does it go for?
a year.
A year, okay, good.
Can you just authorize Mike or I to sign the paperwork so we can get this in place sooner rather than later?
I move that we authorize the town administrator or the assistant town administrator to sign such papers as necessary to enter into the insurance policy as described.
Second.
Thank you.
Any further discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
And then I used my discretion to bring before
You
you,
want to set up minutes there, or you?
Beg pardon? Can't hear you, what?
There's a note of minutes of December 20th on here. Did you deliver these good there?
Acceptance of the minutes.
Oh, no, I just wrote over it and didn't see it.
There were some changes.
We had so many votes that I just went right by it. Were there any changes to the minutes?
I think you had a couple changes. I had left some of my shorthand in there and you had caught
Oh,
my
right,
shorthand.
right. MM and,
Yeah.
I don't want to derail the approval of the minutes, but I
You
have to say-
cannot vote on them.
Well, I don't intend to, but I have to make a comment that the bottom three paragraphs on the first page and the top paragraph of the second page are incoherent to me. I don't know what they're saying. So I'll make that editorial comment. I don't even know what that says. So I won't vote on it.
well, you're not voting on it anyway. Okay.
Right. It doesn't
Can I
make any
take a look
sense.
and see what they were?
Yeah, and it just doesn't make any sense to me. If it makes sense to the two of you, then you can vote on it. That's fine. It's an editorial comment.
Has to do with the insurance on the rail trail, the environmental insurance on the rail trail.
Yeah, my name wasn't in those paragraphs, Gus, so I didn't really read them, so.
Okay.
I'm not sure what this is.
And the reason I homed in on it is because I think the rail trail issue will be coming back, and so these minutes might be important to be accurate.
I will go back and revisit my notes.
And while there's a moment of quiet.
I mean, it's consistent, to my memory, it's consistent with what was said at the meeting.
If it helps, it was confusing to be at the meeting.
In reviewing my town meeting file, I noted that I do have a copy of the report from Anderson and Krieger to the town of Dover on the insurance issues.
Yep.
So if anybody wants it, I have a hard copy.
And I'm ready whenever you are, if I could speak, whenever you guys are ready.
Okay.
I
I'll
would
get
just
there.
move to accept the, well, do you want Christine to go back and work on those?
No,
paragraphs?
I do not intend to derail your approval of the minutes if you're satisfied that they reflect your recollection of what was said.
You mean the last 3 paragraphs on the first page?
And the top paragraph of the second page. The reason I care, though, is because I do think the rail trail issue will come back, and this is an issue, and I don't actually know what that meant, so either it should be.
Why don't we-
I'll go back and review them.
Why don't we put the acceptance of these over to the next meeting, and then we can all take a look and be a little more
And
coherent on it.
I apologize for being difficult about that.
Not at all.
And then let's
They should
return
make
to the request from Suzanne Sion to change the street address from,
First of all, in a way, this is really not a change of address, because the house that was 354 Main Street was completely demolished. There's nothing left from that home. So in a way, this is completely new construction. The house is not oriented in the same way at all. We wanted to keep the Main Street look because we thought that was important, but we truly wanted all access, and we wanted to be facing Pound Street. So we did kind of basically design the house so that all access is from Pound Street, because that corner is extremely, it is dangerous. We hear accidents. We live next door. We hear accidents all the time. So we thought it'd be prudent to have anyone who was accessing that home be correctly oriented to the right street. So that was our mindset. I respect the fact that for 100 years it was 354 Main Street, and that was fabulous. But it's not 354 Main Street, and there's nothing that remains from that home. So, in fact, this is really just a new address. And I guess from my past experience from living here for 27 years, I could cite many examples of homes on corners, and maybe John Naff wants to change that. But I don't know if it's just his personal preference versus our personal preference. But there seems to be no reason not to. Because, for instance, even if the FedEx delivery guy was coming, he would be, or visitors to the home would naturally come down Pound Street. So, and you certainly don't want to come down Main Street and take that right on Pound, because that is, preferably you'd come Pound. So, that's our mentality for it. We're not living there, so it's not our, this is not a huge issue, but it certainly makes sense for a homeowner to have the decision to be theirs. I don't know, I welcome your thoughts on it. I don't understand why it would even be an issue, to be honest with you, to be changing it.
Susan, could you clarify why, recognizing that the driveway is not on Main Street, so
Right.
people are going to figure out, oh, I go to Pound Street to
Right.
get into the driveway.
Right.
Could you clarify why the address itself is a problem?
The 354 Main, it's not a problem. It's not a problem. It's just a preference. It just seemed to be natural to make it a Pound Street address because it's on Pound Street. And all access, driveway, garages, mailbox, and everything's on Pound. So it seems natural to me. I certainly don't want to upset the fire chief or John Naff, but when I did email them and talk with them about this, they just said, we just prefer you keep it. And there was never any explanation. It's just, we like it the way it was, and we prefer you keep it that way. And I appreciate that, but, I didn't really think that was a valid reason. This is my husband, John. I don't know if you have any comments on it.
So I guess
The driving force on street numbering is public safety. It's not convenience or business or anything else. It's public safety. Can they identify the property and get there with minimum confusion and emergency? So that's what you're looking for.
So I guess I would just relate my experience with this, which is that in my subdivision, the developer figured out a way to add-on industrially zoned land to the residential lot that was across the street from me. So he was able to make it big enough to make it 2 residential lots. The houses are built in the residential zone. The acreage to make them 2 lots is industrially zoned land behind them. The result of this was that the driveway curb cut was originally on Bishop Lane. I live on a corner of Bishop Lane and Copperwood. And they changed the curb cut for the driveway to the other side of the house off of Copperwood because of the configuration of the lots made more sense that way. So you've got this Bishop Lane house across the street from me, whose driveway comes out to Copperwood Road. I've had the town ambulance come to my house looking for that house because they assumed that that house was a Copperwood house. My driveway goes into Bishop and into Copperwood, so that all of a sudden there's the ambulance in front of my house looking for 1 Bishop Lane, which is across the street, because logically it should be a Copperwood Road address. And so I had the same reaction when Suzanne was making this, that if the driveway entrance is off of Pound, I think it's much more logical for people to find it off of Pound Street and to expect that the address be Pound Street. And so I think from a public safety standpoint, it's more logical that the house have the address on Pound Street. So that's just my sense. I guess I have a general feeling that the homeowner should have the reason to choose unless there's some really valid reason not
So
to.
I'll give you another perspective, because as you know, my son with special needs takes the ride. And the ride vehicles often come down Main Street and they're looking for my house, which is 354. And they're pulling over on 109 right there between the 2 houses looking for the address. And I've watched them pull over and turn around and back up. I mean, it's definitely not as easy to find those homes on Main Street. It's definitely a lot easier to find a home on Pound Street. Again, I just think from a safety standpoint, it makes sense. But listen, we love Main Street. We do love the beauty of it, and we understand but there's a big rock out there. See that big rock on the corner? And if we do get to change it, we'll have it engraved with 1 Pound Street, so everyone will be aware it's a corner, corner address. So, but this is not something that I want to get anyone upset about. It's a personal preference. I think it makes good sense, but again, I don't want to upset anybody. This is not that big of a deal in the end, but that's what we'd prefer.
No, I don't think it's a matter of anyone being upset.
Yeah.
I don't want to upset anybody
It sounded
either,
like
but
the
I mean,
fire
if
chief on that
the-
letter was like, there's a lot of accidents at that corner, and I don't want to have them documented right now, but there are a lot of accidents at that corner.
Yeah.
A lot.
I mean, my view is if the principal concern is public safety, and there's been no public safety issues with the address as it currently is, and the chief, who has significant responsibility for public safety in the town, thinks keeping it the way it is, it should be kept the way it is. I mean, I understand that, and look, I don't think there's gonna be a rash of people looking to rush out and change the address of their houses as a result of this, but I also think that if the principal concern is public safety and a longer-term view of it, not just what the current homeowner's preferences are, my own disposition would be you'd need a better argument than personal preference to change the address.
Well, I've cited safety issues as well.
Right, but
So you want vehicles coming up and down Main Street, slowing down right at that big corner. Because the woman who lived there for 30 or 40 years was a single woman. She had no children. She lived there alone. So.
right, but again,
So if that house is, it's got 3 or 4 kids living in the future, there's likely to have, because it's now a much larger home, there's going to be a lot more traffic in and out, so.
right, I think if those concerns came about and you had that actual issue, then maybe the next fire chief would look at it and with that evidence. I mean, presumably you presented to him the
Right.
same things you presented to us. He's been in that position for 28 years, and he's been in the fire department for 44 years, and this hasn't been an issue. I mean, and other than personal preference, and then your
Yeah.
opinion about what the safety issue is, again, I don't see the reason to make a
Yeah.
change. I mean, it just seems to me like if it's not broke, why fix it?
Yeah. Again, it's not the same house, but I'm not trying
It's
to.
not because it's the same
Yeah,
house.
yeah,
It's
yeah.
it's the same address. I mean, the house in that location has been whatever it is, 354 Main Street.
I think the safety issue is that people expect the house address to be where the driveway comes off of.
Yeah.
And so that if the driveway coming off of Pound Street and the address is Main Street, that's gonna be confusing to people. And so that it's gonna create a safety issue out on Main Street, I think.
I think what the chief is saying, though, is that when you drive down Main Street and you see houses facing Main Street, you assume those houses are on Main Street. So I'm sympathetic to his view. I think it's not a huge issue, other than that I actually think it can be confusing from a navigation standpoint, that you go down Main Street and you get to, whatever the 380, and here's, 260, and that's not whatever, what's that number? Oh, there's no number on that house. So that, from a navigation standpoint, I can see some confusion. I can see why you'd
We
want
also
the
need an
driveway.
address on the house on the lot next door too, but we should have put that on this one as well, because the adjacent lot does not have an address either. The one on the other side of us.
That's on Main Street or on Pound
That's a
Street?
Main Street. That'll be I'm hoping to 362, so we're 354, 358, and then we need an address for the house next door, which is currently 358A. The lot next door, excuse me. So we do need we would love to have a 362 Main Street for that lot. So, but again, I think.
Doesn't sound like you get an argument over that one.
No, I don't think, I think this is like only a couple of
So do we have a motion on this then? A motion to deny it?
Yeah, I would move that you deny the request.
I'll second it too.
Can we
Okay.
vote to give the other lot the 362 address?
Is there
Or
any
you wanna
process
wait?
we have to follow for that
I
one?
don't know what the process is.
The process in the past has always been that the building department would assign a number to the property whenever time's appropriate, yeah.
Is
Usually
that the kind of thing that
part
requires
the
any
process.
notice or any of those kind of things?
We
No,
don't have a
no.
bylaw on this or anything,
It-
it's just,
It's the building inspector and the fire chief usually get together and decide what's an appropriate address, so.
So I guess that means, could you request it, submit it?
I already have, but it
It just didn't make it into us.
it
yet.
didn't get here.
Is there a,
Well, I think it's an issue with the assessor and the taxes and all that, that she wants a separate address for the lot. But I can talk with them, no problem.
So we have a motion to deny it. That's been seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
And I'm opposed. Let's see, next on our list is, the all-night graduation party just sent in a request today to get a citation. This is outside of our normal timeframes. Didn't think anybody would mind, so. So can we declare whatever day that is, all-night graduation party day for seniors?
June 4th, 2017.
so, a couple, such a pain in the butt. First off, they said that they asked for something for June 3rd, which apparently they're holding some sort of commemoration for that. So the only question I have, she said, could you do something like an all-night graduation party day? I'm happy to do that. The only question, as I read this, I wondered whether it was more appropriate to have the selectmen issue a letter of appreciation for the all-night, for the 25 years of all-night graduation. I don't care, I'm just asking the question.
Yeah, I think that, that should be included in it.
Recognizing the string of people that have done that,
Yeah,
the dedication that's been shown by numerous leaders over the years to this, and the testimony that this is to the graduating seniors that the town of Medfield cares about. Something like
excellent,
that.
yeah.
So,
It's almost like you're gonna write it for my,
if you want, it all came to me, so I did. I did. I will be happy to draft something if you
Give
like
that
the
to
idea of a
Mike.
letter of appreciation. And that doesn't mean we wouldn't be there on the 3rd if that's, I don't even know if they asked us to do that.
they did ask us to come, but
I'd be glad to turn over to you if you'd like to.
I'll send
write
you the
it.
draft and you can finalize it, Mike, so.
Sure.
But my point was, would that be a more appropriate thing, rather than just saying we're declaring ANGP Day, and nobody, and it comes and goes, and it might be a
Yeah, we
more.
could do both. We could have a
We do both?
citation
Yeah, yeah,
declaring
yeah.
ANGP Day.
Yeah.
I think that's what we did with Mark Fisher Day.
You just have to be careful on a graduation party. You want to have the day end at 6 a.m., not to go all day, because you don't know what will happen after they leave.
And I couldn't tell that they don't need any permissions from us for that, do they?
No.
No, okay.
Let's see, under our pending, we've got the Board of Selectmen calendar, and that's, I guess, my suggestion that we really start implementing an annual calendar. Chris took my work product and reworked it in a much better way. And she's basically, did you guys get copies of that?
Yeah, I want to talk about it.
I'm sorry, you do?
I do.
Excellent, good.
Let me, first off, I absolutely support the idea of having a calendar. She gave us this, which I just saw now. What I did with what you did, Pete, is I looked, you sent the original draft. I went through this in detail. And I looked at it a different way. And the concept of doing this, I'm in agreement with. I have two main points. One is, over above all this, I think we need to have a set of town goals, overarching town goals. Mike, you've already heard me say this, so I'm gonna give you these for your consideration. These are above the detailed planning. This is kind of strategic level goals. I'm not pushing for these specific goals. If you don't like them, you want to delete any, you want to add any, you want to revise any, I don't care. 9 out of 12 of these reflect my honest effort after 22 years of putting down what I think the town has been trying to do based on what I've either heard, how I've seen votes go, or real activity that I've seen in town. It's too bad Susan, well, maybe it's okay. 3 of these I added just to put 3 in each of the 4 boxes. So for those in the audience, I have 4 boxes of goals. There's overall financial goals. There are affordable/community housing goals. There are 2 other goals these are softer. One is promote the healthy and responsible development of Medfield's youth. And to understand what I mean by that is this town has had a strong and sustained commitment to having top schools. There's more things than just that, but I put a category. And the 4th one is to protect, preserve, and promote the history and character of Medfield. So when I look at the things that we do in town, this was just my cut at trying to do something. Now, the reason I did all this, I've been pushing, like the State Hospital Master Planning Committee, putting a proposal together, anticipating that they're going to trade off certain priorities and they're going to present it to the town. If the taxpayers can understand proposals like that in the context of how those proposals hit some number of these goals, I think it improves the ability of the Master Planning Committee to get acceptance of what they're proposing. So as a broad guideline for what guides us, I'm not trying to force anything that we aren't already doing. I was trying to reflect kind of the way I think we do things. So I'll offer that as something above what you have here by way of detailed planning, Pete. But I'm not trying to change, I'm not trying to disrupt anything. I'm actually just trying to crystallize something that I think is the way we do stuff. Or I want to crystallize something and discover that we're working at cross purposes if that's the case, so.
And you can see that's one of the things here on the list on the annual calendar is to talk about goals for the selectmen.
Good. This is goals for the town. These are the broad goals.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
if you get to May, then we're talking about potential goals and objectives for the coming year.
This is not the coming year. This is strategic.
Okay,
This is
all right.
overarching.
Well, this
Okay.
should be part of
So,
that,
yeah.
I would say.
Okay. Well, so, good, it's from May, so it was timely.
Yeah, absolutely, good going.
One other comment, one broad I mean, I did one other thing. That's the long-range planning goal setting. I think that's fine. There are budget cycle activities, which is the timing of when the selectmen are looking at budgets relative to the warrant committee, relative to the detailed preparation for the town meeting. And I'm just suggesting that we look at the timing and sequencing of that. When I was on the warrant committee, the one thing that struck me is there were times when town departments would come to the selectmen first with ideas. the selectmen would talk to the department and tell them what a wonderful job they'd done, but the selectmen didn't understand. The warrant committee knew there wasn't money to support that stuff. So we were put in this awkward position of effectively overriding the selectmen because the money wasn't there. So I'm looking for a way that we could basically have the warrant committee do the financial pass before we go into any kind of a reaction as selectmen to approve or endorse. I'm just trying to remove the friction. I think in what you had here, Mike, there's a point in time in September or something that you have Mike Sullivan providing budget guidance to the departments, but then in October, the warrant committee provides budget guidance to the departments, and it seems to me there's some, I like what you did, I'm just saying, I think there's some places we could tighten that up. On the quarterly budget performance, I thought that was a great idea. I don't know how long a conversation needs to be. The question I have for Mike is, these are scheduled to take place on the first selectmen's meeting after the close of a quarter.
Too soon.
That's what I thought. It might be,
It's usually probably, I'd say, a minimum of 4 weeks, more likely 6 weeks before the accounting department would have
okay.
receipts
So,
posted and,
so depending on how
Dated.
clear we want that, we may want to slip those quarterly meetings
Absolutely.
like 1 month to get that.
you can certainly get the expenditures on a weekly basis because when they run the warrant, they can just do of what's been expended to date and what's the
Okay.
percentage and what's left.
Okay.
So
And then the last set of items you had on this were reviews with departments and committees. I think it's a great idea that the selectmen have an intention or an objective of meeting with every department and committee at least once a year. The only question I had was whether the sequencing you had there was intentional, so that was random.
No, it was
Okay.
random, yeah.
So I think we could probably do some work, like, for instance, the Park and Rec, I think, was August, and I'm thinking either we ought to be talking to Park and Rec going into the summer, or Park and Rec coming out of this. I don't know that I'm right about any of this, but those were my reactions to the draft, so.
when we're trying to put that together in the past, we've tried to group committees that might
Yeah.
have some commonality. So for
Right.
example, if you got the Dwight Derby House, the Lowell Mason House, the Historicals
Yeah.
Commission, the Historical Society, the Historic District Committee, if you can try to put them all in one meeting,
Right.
and then they can, first of all, it's helpful to find out what the other groups are up to.
Right.
But it's hard getting together, though. Sometimes there's always somebody who's got a prior commitment, so you do the best you can.
Yeah.
And that's why
But-
frequently you have
So,
to.
anyway, bottom line, I liked what you were trying to do there, Pete. It was just, as I looked at it, those are some ideas on how we could actually just sequence it better.
Yeah, the one strong view I had about the calendar in terms of meeting is I think we ought to meet sooner rather than later in the year with the warrant committee and the school committee, because that's really the big drivers of the town budget. So we ought to really know in the summer, coming into the fall, what the school committee is looking ahead towards for the next year, so that we can be thinking about that overall capital budget, and also looking forward to budget projections down the road. You can't do any of it without input from the school committee. So that's one suggestion I would make as far as a meeting to have. I think the summer seems like the best time to do it in terms of, Jeff is a little less busy in the summer, Mike's a little less busy in the summer. And so if they were to come for a meeting in July, usually only once in July, if that was sort of
I like that, Mike. The question I wonder about, is particularly the school department, is having seen budget guidance go out every year and fundamentally be ignored by the school department each year, and then we get into a dance over the months between then and whenever the budget first comes out and when we get to the town meeting. I'm wondering if there's guidance to be provided. It's either the schools are telling us, I just want to understand how that information that comes out at that early point in the process, how we understand it. Is it schools saying, here's what we kind of hope we're going to be able to get, and it's this big? We're going to have a conversation. It's not going to be that big, or is it, no, you have to have it this big, and we're telling you now, and that's not going to change. So
I think it would be more, I don't know that it would be guidance to them so much as input on, here's what we see for the next year. I mean, just
Okay.
for example, over the
Okay.
course of this past budget season,
yeah,
those of us who were paying close attention knew that there was a possibility of an override coming out of that budget. If you weren't paying close attention to it, you wouldn't necessarily know that until deeper into the process.
Yeah.
It seems to me, given the sequence of everything and the fact that The one formal role that we have with respect to the school budget is whether to put an override on the ballot or not. That if that's something that's going to happen, we ought to have that input and that at least suggestion sooner rather than later, so that we're prepared, they're prepared, and we understand from the standpoint of setting the town budgets, that if the schools are gonna come in for a request at a certain level, that we're likely to need an override, or we're gonna need a significant amount of additional discipline from the other town budgets as we head even into the budget season, because ultimately the budgets that are presented to the warrant committee are our budgets, and we should be supporting. The budgets that go to the warrant committee should be budgets that we support. So I think it's more of a big picture. So I wouldn't say we'd be saying to the school committee, we don't have any jurisdiction of the school committee, but at least for them to know, okay, this year we think we're not gonna be able to squeeze it, and they know what the number is, right? So there's an outer limit.
Yep.
It's a matter of simple math, before you start getting into more significant cuts in other town budgets. So I think that would be helpful in terms of kind of future projections as well, so they know what's coming down the line. We should have more information about the longer-term capital issues as well, and I think that would be something that we'd also kind of look at in that summer meeting. Okay, when you're on, let's look ahead for the capital for the next 5 years based on what we're, and because obviously that plays into, one of the discussions we're gonna have when this capital budget comes back, is sort of what the long-term approach to dealing with those expenses is gonna be, whether it's the one we've traditionally had or it's gotta be a new one. And I think that would be the time to have those discussions as well, so there's some guidance to the departments and everything else coming into the year. So.
Okay.
Historically, the selectmen have taken a very hands-off approach to the budgets, and I think that we probably should be taking more of a policy position on things, and so I think that I think it makes absolute sense that we talk to the school committee earlier and try to see if we can be on the same
Right, we can't be in a
horizon, same
position where
page.
we're not, effectively not taking responsibility for, I certainly felt as though in reviewing the budgets that came through, that the budgets that we saw were budgets that we supported, and that when they came in, if I had a disagreement with the town budget, I think we have to be responsible for it, in the sense that, we're not one step removed from the budgets that are submitted by the town departments, and so,
I think what happened this year too, I think the warrant committee was more satisfied with the operating budgets. They were able to get through those and come to decisions in time to have a good handle on it for town meeting, and they were able to, effectively work with the budgets to eliminate the override. Where they felt very frustrated this year was with the special articles, that they felt they had all these things thrown at them last minute that were still in the process of being revised even into March. And they felt that they didn't have a good handle on what some of these things were. So I think, and I don't know how you go about it, we've been trying it for years, telling people we need the articles in earlier to get them in proper form, but they still have a tendency to come in late, and it's usually a crisis, and they have to have it. So.
right. So I think that's something else we can talk about in a future meeting, but I think we ought to impose some sort of deadline. The warrant is ultimately our responsibility, right? I mean,
Yeah.
under the charter.
Yes.
And so to put a deadline to say, if you want to make sure that your warrant article gets
Yeah,
reviewed by
here's
the
the
warrant
date.
committee and gets in there, here's the deadline, and you have to produce it. Instead of kind of everybody just relying on Mike to be, effectively aware of what's going on, right? And then anticipate what the articles are.
Yeah.
And then everyone else can sort of wake up and say, oh yeah, well, here's an article that we have. I think the onus should be on people who are proponents of articles to draft their articles, rather than expecting that at some point you'll deliver to them, hey, here's this nicely written article that you mentioned once at a meeting last summer, so I put together an article for you, right? And so, if departments want an article, they should have to do it, rather than expecting you to do it and then, criticizing you if they don't like what you did.
Yeah, that did happen.
So, one of the things based on that happening is I am preparing the board and committee handbook. And one of the things that will be included in there that will also go to department heads is a form for a warrant article. So that you will fill out, we'll give you some standard language to start with, fill out your warrant article, and there'll be a date on there, which you'll sign and turn into the selectman's office. But if you want to have it reviewed by council for wording, there'll be a deadline so that we can get it to the warrant committee sooner rather than later. That way we're getting warrant requests written rather than passing in the hallway saying, don't forget, I need a spot on the warrant.
Right.
And then we either forget somebody or we put somebody in that didn't want to be in and.
Right. Because I
avoid
mean, I
that.
know from just the way, during my warrant committee time, the way the cycle worked, a lot of times it felt as though the month of January was something lost to the warrant committee, because a lot of the special articles, they weren't quite ready to come in yet. There were still a lot of the budgets that were still being baked on the school committee budget schedule. Really didn't get done till later on, and so you'd have sort of these meetings in January that would be, you know, quieter, and then suddenly you'd have everything, you know, meeting twice a week, 3 times a week, trying to get through it at the end. So if we can, the special articles should almost never be an emergency situation, because they should all be policy type issues that people can see coming. And so I think trying to put some more discipline around departments with respect to those kind of articles, that if you want to get it in, and then, you know, the warrant committee can decide how tough they want to be and just say, look, if it doesn't come in by a certain date, we're just going to be a no on the article.
Right. And related to that is we cannot go as late as we have the last 2 years in getting the warrant report to the printer. It costs us more money when we go that late, and it's just too rushed at the end to make sure that it's you know, done correctly. So
This
we
year
need to get
was
it done.
kind of a perfect storm with a variety of special
Mhm.
articles coming in from the blue, so hopefully it's a one-time thing.
Those 14 pages you were churning out.
Wasn't my choice. I'll never summarize an article again, though, I'll tell you that.
Pete, could I back us up administratively?
ahead.
On the all-night graduation party, I'm drafting a letter of appreciation. Did we approve also declaring it ANGP Day? So we didn't actually vote on it.
Yeah,
So
let's-
I would move that we declare June 4th, 2017 as all-night graduation party
Day and night.
day and night, to continue to the morning of June 5th, 2017, and that an appropriate citation from the Board of Selectmen be issued reflecting our appreciation of the all-night graduation party, recognizing them on their 25-year contribution to the town of Medfield. Such citation to be drafted by third
Killing
member
me.
Gusper.
Yeah, would you repeat that?
Second, make it so.
All the ex officio members endorse that motion.
All those in favor? Yep.
Aye.
Um,
Just making sure.
So if we recorded that, then we can just write that out, Gus.
Yeah.
So the calendar is, I think, is going to be a process, and so that I think we'll just refine it going forward, and we'll have a better iteration every time. So are we done with the calendar? Anything else on the calendar? Next is the Selectmen Communication Policy from Mr. Murby.
So I passed out, in your absence, Mark, at the last meeting, I passed out a document. I think you probably have gotten, I hope you've gotten, you send that on? Well, you probably.
I think I sent it to you.
So, so the issue, well, this is even better, because Mark is totally unprepared, so he can't just stop this conversation. The, you need to look at it's a 3-page article that I wrote. As the brand-new selectman, I had a couple things that came up over the past couple of weeks that I assumed would be handled in a certain way that are not. And the issue is the communications from the selectmen around the open meeting laws, what can happen, what doesn't happen, what shouldn't happen. You'll see in the article I've cited 2 instances where, from my view, they were not handled in a way that I would have expected them to be handled, given the open meeting laws. They were handled consistent with, I think, the past policies of the Board of Selectmen.
Talk about communication among the 3 of you.
I'm talking about, I'm talking about public communication.
People querying us.
Very, very, just, you need to read it, and maybe we defer it for yet another meeting until we
Yeah, I
can
think
get
because we
somewhere.
do need Mark's input on it, so.
But here's the issue, so I'll give you one of them. When an email comes in addressed to all 3 of us, I saw that as a communication to the Board of Selectmen. And I would have expected a communication to go back to that person from the Board of Selectmen. The policy has been each selectman just says whatever he wants and responds independently. I think that's a miserable way to manage, so.
Well, I can respond initially, which is, the starting point is, you only function as a board, you only have power as a board. Individual selectmen have no authority whatsoever unless the rest of the members have so voted in a particular instance. That's,
Well, they all have opinions, though.
that's the starting point. The other thing is, if it comes into all 3 of you, unfortunately, the law, the statutes now have not caught up with the way social media works. So what you end up having is a deliberation.
So I'm going to stop you right there. I have no interest in hearing from anybody about what can't be done. The question I put on the table is, and this was intended to be an answer to what could be done. Very simply, I propose two things. The selectmen are free to communicate back out, and for me, the criteria is, and they can copy the other selectmen on matters of fact and opinions that have already been expressed in other public open meetings. So in other words, matters of public record and nothing else. I was looking for how we could communicate in a way that allows us to talk to taxpayers, that avoids us looking like imbeciles, as I think sometimes selectmen have looked at in other
No
meetings.
policy can do that
But
for us.
my
guys.
opinion, well, excessive, unnecessarily looking like imbeciles. My point is, I'm looking for an answer on how this can work. I'm not interested in another discussion about how the open meeting law blocks us from having it work. There is a default policy right now of each selectman responds individually. That's how it's been. I think that's a poor policy because basically you have three selectmen that are expressing opinions out to the public, not copying each other. So the only person who knows exactly how screwed up they are is whoever it is they're all responded to. And this doesn't strike me as being a very smart way to run a government or to run a board of selectmen. So I'm not lecturing, I'm not demanding. I was trying to figure out a way that made it possible for selectmen to communicate to the citizens in a way that allows us also to act in a somewhat coherent fashion under certain circumstances. That's it. If you read what I wrote,
There just isn't a mechanism for that legally.
you have to tell me, well, I'm not buying that. Tell me what we can, what I'm saying is you gotta tell me.
That's why you have a town administrator. He's supposed to field that stuff.
So read my document first, and at the next meeting, let's bring it up. My interest is in hearing what we can do, not what we can't do.
I'm just the messenger. I understand what you're saying.
Take it on as a challenge, Mark.
I didn't draft this stuff. Matter of fact, I was a part of a group that had vocal and extended objections and concerns as this stuff made its way through the legislature and the Attorney General's office. But we're like the prophet crying in the wilderness because they did exactly what they wanted to do. And we're stuck with a very broad definition of deliberation. So, Chris, would you just, if you did send it to me, I didn't see it, would you please resend it? I'll look at it, we can have this, continue this conversation.
Yep, I'll put it on the agenda for the next meeting.
So what I'm getting at is I ran for office, and the feedback I got when I was running is people saying that we don't have enough transparency, we don't know enough of what's going on, and I'm saying, there's all kinds of transparency. Call Mike, call Chris, that was my answer, but when I look now at how our methods of communications are, it's not pure transparency, it's kind of incoherence, and I'm trying to address that, so.
In the old days, you used to pick up the land phone, you called one of the selectmen, you probably called all three of the selectmen, and it was all below radar, nothing happened. Now you've got electronic stuff where it's instantaneous and everybody's online, and voila, you got a violation.
Right. I would make one other point. This was a policy for communications that are sent to all three selectmen, not any communications to one or even two. I wasn't addressing that at all.
Two's a quorum.
It's a very this is very limited to formal emails that come to all three selectmen in a single message that, just to me, begged for a coherent response going back and recognizing. All I was expecting is that the chairman would designate one person to respond. The question had more to do with facts than opinion it would come right down to it. So read what I said. I'm trying to figure out a way to make this work that doesn't force people to look stupider than they actually are, I guess is the way I put it.
So we'll talk about that at the next meeting then. And so then the next item on pending is we got a notice from the state regarding our veteran service officer and our non-compliance with the full-time requirement. Mike, Chris, we're being asked to give them a timeline as to when we're going to comply and how we're going to comply.
The penalty apparently is limited to
The money?
limited reimbursement. So-
Potentially limited.
Right.
You didn't even say that. The one thought I had to his letter, he says, I'd be happy to help you figure out this, and why not go back to him and say, sure, we want help setting up a district.
Yeah, the problem with the district is it has to be contiguous.
He said he could help.
Yep.
Tell him we want his help.
Yeah, okay, I'll be glad to call them and
It's a-
see what we can explore.
Uh,
I think, the law, they're gonna quote the law that says if you're over 12,000, you gotta have full-time.
Yeah, and I'd quote the letter that says, that's great, we understand that. You said you could help us with the district. It makes no sense at all for us to have a full-time person. There is a separate issue here, too. Do we actually know who we would hire? Do we have a candidate?
I've
No,
been
we have to
trying,
advertise.
I've been.
So we have two issues. One is, what we're actually gonna do, but the second one is,
Well, the reason why we haven't been able to advertise is, am I advertising for a part-time, a full-time? Am I advertising for, until I know what the parameters of the position are, it's hard for me to advertise and get viable candidates.
can we have informal discussions to even find out if there's any identifiable viable candidates?
That we have, and we have not been able to identify
That's
anybody.
what I-
Yeah.
that would be the
Those
first-
conversations
yeah.
have taken place, and there's nobody that we've been able to find that's been.
We've tried several avenues, explored several avenues, and I thought I had come up with a couple of solutions, and they fell apart, and people didn't accept the jobs and whatnot, so it's a tough
Yeah.
crack. In fact, personnel issues are becoming real problems. We're having trouble filling other jobs in town with qualified people. But,
Any half-time jobs we could combine with a veteran service officer to get to a defined
We're
full-time.
trying.
That Christine could advertise.
The Municipal Modernization Act actually allowed you to liberalize the ability to have regional type things. They specifically excluded veterans agents from that ability. So that was lobbied at the time.
And as a veteran, the idea that this position, which is not justified at full-time, is basically structured as a welfare position, because whether you need it or not, you have to pay somebody full-time. I personally resent it. I don't think veterans need that. I think a veteran's position should be real. I think we should be committed to making sure veterans get the benefits they need.
There's a very good
But-
purpose for it, and the veterans deserve to be treated fairly.
Yeah, but the job,
Yes, absolutely. I think they're mixing the chicken and the eggs, or the.
right. So if we could find a job, if we could find a way to package a full-time job, I'm not against
Well,
having a
we-
full-time
Yeah,
veteran.
we had a proposal from that, actually, from the veteran service officer, to combine it with the Council on Aging and the Youth Outreach.
Council on Aging has social workers, the school department has social workers, the town has social workers. Do we want to add more social workers?
No, we need
Well,
to
the council-
redefine part
well, if you
of one
talk-
of the existing social worker positions to be combined.
If you talk to your current veteran service agent, Mike, that's what he was proposing, was that the perfect candidate for the job would be a female veteran social worker. That's what Ron Griffin thinks that he should be succeeded by if you talk to him, so
Yeah.
I think
But
that,
that has to be agreed to by the Council on Aging as well.
I think they developed the proposal between Cheryl LaValle and Don Alcott and Ron Griffin talking about it, and.
Well, we've seen the proposal. I guess my question is, are we creating a new position then? Because then I'm not sure if we have enough work for all of those social workers.
Well, I think that, somebody should be talking to the town employees and finding out. I think they thought that they did, that the three of them were the ones that came up with it, and so I think you guys should have a conversation with them, maybe.
Well, we'll see what we can work out. It's a tough nut to crack, but we'll do our best.
So I think what I.
We'll
what
call the
I
Veterans
hear-
Office and ask for their.
Ron's
assistance.
point, having talked with Ron, his recognition of the kind of, I don't know, compassionate qualities maybe that social workers bring to the table is the same kind of compassionate quality a veterans agent needs to have to be willing to forge through the bureaucracy of the Veterans Administration to get veterans the benefits that they need. So that technically his description of the job's right on. But I would agree with you, Christine, but that doesn't mean we just add a new half-time position. That means we need to, one way or the other, figure out a way to combine it and restructure to where we do that without just simply adding budget because somebody wants to have a full-time job.
And I'm guessing from my conversations with Ron that he would tell you that the veteran service agent is not just providing interface from the veteran to the Veterans Administration. He's solving all kinds of problems with Mass Health, Medicare,
Yeah.
Medicaid.
Yep.
He's doing a lot of social work
Mhm.
for them, basically.
But he's been doing it on a half-time basis, so doubling that.
Right.
I mean,
He may be, actually, knowing Ron, he may be doing it on a full-time basis, but.
okay.
So we'll hear more about that later. Selectmen's reports, Mr. Marcucci.
Let's see, it seems like it's been a month since we met, but I think it's only 12 days. So we collectively attended two Boy Scout Courts of Honor for 4 different Boy Scouts. Last weekend, 2 weekends ago? 2 weekends ago. That were terrific, and those were always uplifting events to attend. And I thought the Little League Parade was a good start to another baseball season. The one thing I wanted to raise is our upcoming calendar, just so we're clear on our meeting dates. So I know we've added a meeting for May 23rd. The girls' basketball team can come.
Yes, and we are keeping that to a very light agenda,
Okay,
just,
because I can't be there. I have a previous work commitment.
right.
So the 23rd. So we're adding the 23rd for the girls' basketball team. We're then going to meet June 6th, June 20th.
Mhm.
And then the first third Tuesday in July would be July 4th.
So
I
we-
assume we're not going to meet on July 4th.
No, Evelyn had only one meeting in July,
July 18th?
correct.
Unless there's some emergency, because you can only make transfers, for example, up to June 15th, first 15 days of June.
Right, that would be in June, yeah, June, we're all set for meetings.
No, excuse me, July. Under that municipal modernization bill, they've made it permanent. You can transfer funds between budgets the last 2 months of the fiscal year and the first 15 days of the next fiscal year. So if for some reason there was an emergency where you had to transfer funds to get through the year end, there might have to be some sort of a meeting to accomplish that.
And then we'll meet August 1st and August 15th.
Correct.
In light of what Mike just said, rather than the 18th of July, my plans aren't clear yet, but would it make more sense for us to meet on the 11th of July, just to fit within that 15?
Well, and hopefully we won't have to meet. Hopefully we'll try to, if necessary, if your meeting was the 24th of June is the last meeting,
The 20th.
20th.
I actually think the 11th of July makes some sense, Gus, just from the standpoint, if we're not going to meet, we go to the 11th, then we meet in early August. If that's okay with Mike and Christine.
I think it's fine with me. I think, yeah.
That would make some sense.
with
I mean, either date is fine for me, but I see the logic in that. So we'll meet July 11th, August 1st, August 15th. You got that, Bill?
Do.
All right, does that work for you? Good for you?
I'll let you know.
All right.
The Thursday before.
By 3.
By 3 o'clock.
By 3.
Anything else,
I'd
Mike?
have a June snowstorm.
Anything else, Mike?
Nope, that's it.
Gus?
So we were together on all these things, not talking any town business the
None.
entire time. But I think it was my first opening day baseball parade, so that was kind of cool. It's one Medfield tradition I'd never participated in before. And then, I don't know, you may want to talk more about this, but we actually had Pete, as you know, is a major sponsor of the Medfield Foundation, and there's been an effort to basically establish an endowment fund for the Medfield Foundation. So my wife and I had a chance to go to a gathering in our local neighborhood that kind of talked about that. I'd heard about it before, but my wife had not, and she walked out much more better understanding and actually kind of more sympathetic or more supportive of the whole idea. But
Oh, good, it worked.
it did work. Yeah, it did work. And I might report that Pete learned that there is such a thing as a sparrow trap that you can use to get rid of those pesky English sparrows that go after all the songbirds. So he was a little shocked to realize that he'd missed out on that opportunity to clear his yard of English sparrows.
I'd
but,
been told that I really shouldn't be putting up bluebird houses unless I was willing to kill the sparrows, but I haven't started yet, so, but I guess I have to.
I offered to loan him one of my baseball bats, but he declined.
Anything else?
Do you want me to keep going?
Report on, sure, absolutely.
No, that's all I have.
The only other thing well, there are a couple things. One, I just mentioned that I had my office hours a week or two ago, and there was just a huge amount of interest in affordable housing that came forward from a number of people. And then lastly, I would just, the Medfield State Hospital Master Planning Committee asked me to announce that they're having their town public input meeting next week on May 24 at the Blake Middle School gym from 7 to 9:30 p.m. And they're looking for people to come and have a interactive process with them, give them some input, and they're looking to shape what they're going to give to the town based on, I think, what they hear from the residents. So come out and share your input.
Can I comment on that?
Absolutely.
One point on that, if you go on the Facebook site, they've actually established an Eventbrite sign-in, and given they have no clue how many people are actually going to show up, so they don't know whether to plan for 500 or 50, if you're inclined to go and can indicate to them on the event, through Eventbrite, that you're planning to be there, you're not obligated, but if you could do that, that'll help them out. So.
Thank you. Informational. Chris, Mike?
No, I think we're all set. There was an item we added to the agenda that came in today, which I'm sure people were very happy to know. The drought is over. The state removed all
As of yesterday.
drought warnings in eastern Massachusetts. They said they
Water restriction kicked in.
still be water restriction. They've asked people to conserve water. But there is officially the drought has been declared ended, so.
So, I see the Arbor Day Foundation congratulating us on being a tree city. That reminds me that I actually had a meeting with people about trees that I should report on to you guys about. Richard DeSorga had apparently gone around as a selectman and kept telling us that there was a tree map, and we finally found it. It was among the missing, but it's now found. But basically, the plan is to try to plant some trees in front of certain downtown locations. The post office, Montrose. Montrose is getting taken care of, I think. Well, no, I'm not sure that it is. Montrose, and then the new LIP project, but that's where it's getting taken care of by Mr. Borelli. He's got a bunch of plantings. And then there were a couple other sites now that I'm not thinking of in the downtown. But the post office was the one that I was thinking that we could actually maybe go to the postmaster, and if you guys are willing, we could. What the suggestion was that we would try to, apparently the trees cost around $200 a piece for the size that Bobby Kennedy would suggest that we put in. The people at the meeting were Bobby Kennedy, Mike Leaders, Eddie Hinckley, the tree warden, and myself.
Bill Leader?
Pardon?
Mike.
Leaders.
Mike Leader.
And Richard DeSorga. And the general wisdom was that the trees are about $200. The town would approach these private property owners because it makes a lot more sense to plant the trees back from the sidewalks so that at Montrose, not in the berm where they are now, where they need to come out apparently, but plant them further back in the lawn, and they have a much better chance of success and less damage to the sidewalk, so that the town would offer to plant the trees and pay for the $200 that it would cost per tree, and ask the property owner to take care of it, so the post office, Montrose, and
Yeah, you need to put them back there, because for one thing, you run into problems with ADA if you try to put them in the sidewalk, because you're, initially you don't have the clearance for a wheelchair, and eventually the roots push the sidewalk up
Yep.
and makes it impassable.
Yep.
So.
And Mike Leaders had a list of half a dozen trees that he suggested for the downtown. Apparently, they're ornamental pear trees now that don't have all the limbs fall off like mine did. So,
The ginkgo trees are all come back, they've all survived the winter, so
Oh, good.
they've all done well.
Yeah.
New type.
So would you guys mind if I go to the postmaster over here and ask him if he could take a couple down?
I'm not sure there is a postmaster.
No, he's on a year's leave of absence for
Oh,
something.
I'll go over and
or
ask the
other.
person at the counter. If I can plant some trees.
Talk to Evelyn before you.
Yeah.
I've heard about her experience. They're really good.
If she's over her nervous breakdown, yeah.
But he had said that one.
Maybe the selectmen should just go out one midnight and plant some
Plant
trees
some.
and then disappear, and they'll just start watering them.
I don't know if you may not recall the arrangement with the post office is, the post office is a build, maintain, operate, lease. So the actual owner of the post office is some guy down on the South Shore who does this all over the place, has post office leases. In this case, it's peculiar too, in that the town owns the land under the post office.
The ground lease.
The ground lease. So a private contractor owns the post office building. The town owns the post office land. I guess we probably need to take a look and see what our rights are. Maybe we can put the trees in our right anyway, because we're the landowner.
Well, maybe we can ask the guy that owns it.
He's tougher to get than the
Oh, all
postmaster.
right.
I think he spends I think he spends a lot of the year in Florida.
Yeah, I'll go ask the person at the counter.
Ask them about bulk mailing.
I'll ask him if it's gone out yet. Yeah, all right. Any other business then for us?
I move to adjourn.
Second.
Excellent. Very good. Thank you, everybody, for coming.
The preceding was a production of Medfield TV, Community Shows.